Uh, Good evening, and welcome back to Post Apoc Horse Talk. I'm your host, Gantagious, and this is my co-host, BG. Say hello, BG.
Hi there, and let's also not forget when we gotta let go.
So before we go on tonight, to avoid cluttering and to be more expedient later in the show, if you can ask any questions during the show, BG will compile them for the Q&A. Normal spiel, as you understand. Now, our guest tonight, or rather guests, are a pair working on another FOE RPG system, Dead Tree. Please welcome to the show, Zen, an L90BL. Is that correct?
Yes. You can also just call me that asshole.
Let's just go with L9.
That works.
So, let us begin where we should normally begin, at the beginning. How long have both of you been working on this? And if you could also give everyone a little bit of a base idea of what your system is at this point too.
Alrighty. Well, first up, I'm Zen. I am the lead game designer, and we've been working on this since I want to say 2013, early 2014. And if you guys ever played Dark Heresy, that's the closest related system I can think to Fallout Equestria. It's a D100 system. It's not like playing Pathfinder or regular Dungeons and Dragons.
All right. Well, seeing as that was a lot briefer than I thought you were going to be with this.
We've had that conversation asked a lot.
You gotta figure like what to cut down on, especially if they don't know what you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, perhaps you then could expand upon as to what was your inspiration for this project all those moons ago, in the off yonder days of 2014.
Yes. Well, this is the easier part because this is just pure me talking. All right. So back when we first started getting into Fallout Question, me and L9, we wasn't originally friends, by the way.
We were mortal enemies.
Oh yeah, we try to kill each other all the time.
I still have all the scars.
Yes. Don't worry, I owe him like 100 more.
Unfortunately.
Kinky.
He's like a dwarf with a book of grudges. Same height too. Ah!
So, anyway, when we started playing Fallout Equestria, one day we decided, hey, we should get this printed out for ourselves, right? Because we would play a enhanced version of the KCAT core like document you'll find on Google somewhere. And I had played Mad Mods myself before I started like adding to it and started making it more coherent. And it says, hey, we should get this printed out for ourselves, said L9. And me said no at first. But after a bit of convincing, I decided that, well, if we're going to have it for ourselves, and there are all these Fallout Equestria fans who not only want a set system, a system that can be like a fixture in the fandom, I decided to go along with it, and here we are.
So, L9 was the instigating factor, and you were just being dragged along for the ride to begin with.
That's usually how it
Yeah,
always
pretty much.
goes.
Yeah.
I mean,
he had the shackles, the branding iron. He was ready.
no, that's Ty.
Keep it together, lads. Keep it together. We're only like 10 minutes into the show.
It's funnier knowing that no one really gets a lot of those jokes because they don't see what we look like. Now everyone's face palming.
All right. So I am personally very partial to role-playing games. been quite an active person in role-playing games for what now? The last 9 years? Yes, 9 years. Let's go with that. So here's an opportunity to sell your project to the audience that isn't maybe quite sold on the idea. Could you perhaps tell us a bit more than that very basic introduction to Dead Tree, and why it's different than maybe other Fallout Equestria-esque role-playing games, like say Western Ventures or Shotgun Diplomacy?
All right. So I had to study a lot with the other Fallout offsets from KCAT's core. I guess the strongest difference between those and Fallout Dead Tree Dead Tree PnP, because I know there's the book out called Dead Tree, based on our system, by the way. Is that it is a direct evolution of the KCAT core, and it tries to stay true to most of it. We had to get permission from KCAT and everyone but Sunrise, because Sunrise was, if you don't know, Sunrise was one of the original creators of the pen and paper.
Sunrise was the original creator. Sunrise ended up making the base rule set, which afterwards KCAT came in and helped revamp, which after that became what is colloquially known as KCAT Core, which is like when people think the Fallout Equestria PnP and they get their hands on the Google Doc online that you can just find by Googling. That's called KCAT Core. But the iteration before KCAT Core was made by Sunrise with a little bit of input from people from, I think it was the Fallout Equestria forum.
People from the forum.
Yeah. But the main rule set was made by
Sunrise.
the main rule set as it is today is based off of KCAT Core, which was made by KCAT and Sunrise.
Yeah.
And that was based off of a rule set made by Sunrise.
Now, you caught me curious here. Was there any reason why Sunrise didn't want anyone else, taking this and going somewhere else with it?
Oh, it wasn't that he didn't want to, or she. They disappeared. They're just gone.
Oh.
We couldn't find. We spent like, oh god, 8 months, a year,
It was like
looking
a year.
everywhere. Getting in contact.
KCAT, we contacted the forums. We could not find this person.
Like, we contacted people who were direct friends with him or her. With them. There we go. We contacted people who were direct friends with them and were involved in the original KCAT core system, either playtesting or editing or whatever. And they're all like, yeah, haven't seen from them, haven't heard from them in like years. And so after about a year of looking, we went to everyone else who we needed to get permission from, including KCAT, and said, all right, here's the deal. Would it be okay if we just moved ahead with this project while crediting Sunrise, because Sunrise is properly credited, and then not getting their permission, and we would only go forward if every person on that, I guess, council of people we needed permission for said yes, which they all did. So it wasn't from a lack of trying. And that
Hello?
Anything, and is like, qu'est-ce que fuck? Contact us at info.deadtree@gmail.com or in our Dead Tree Studios server, and we would be happy to talk to you about it. Because we're not trying to steal your shit. But yeah.
All right. Well, that settled my curiosity on that. The Sunrise just dropped off the face of the earth.
Because if it was that Sunrise turned around and said no to us, we would have not been doing this. Because like that's a douche move.
All right. So this is one I should have asked Whack and Sour Cherry when they were on. And if you're in the chat, hello, you two. I will ask you this eventually. But what fics are considered canon to Dead Tree? Because this is probably going to be a very contentious issue to pretty much everybody listening.
Obviously the main one. We do have references from the other fics.
No, the Fallout Equestria main fic is considered fanon. What are you talking about, Zon?
Yeah, of course. What am I saying? But anyway, we do have references to the other fics in our system. However, if you were to ask us which one would we pick, it's obviously just the main one. We don't claim that the hoof exists, even if we do have a reference to it. There's obviously the armor that Puppy Smiles wore in the system, but obviously we don't say like, "Hey, it's canon."
Stories in their entirety
to make their own player.
Yeah, stories in the entirety. The only one that's canon to Dead Tree is the base fic, and then we just kind of pick and choose stuff from other fics that we like that we pull inspiration from. But
it's like you're trying to avoid making anything contentious right now.
Yeah, it's also like we went about and we found popular. We pulled inspiration from popular designs for things, and we didn't actually like rip off people's art. But if most most people consider Little Pip to have I think it's green eyes now, and I mean everyone knows what quote unquote Little Pip looks like. And so if we were to draw a Little Pip, we would have drawn a Little Pip based off of that design because that's what's considered canon in the community. And it goes the same way with like other aspects, like the power armor or whatever. So we did take a lot of what the community itself generally finds canon into our design choice as best we could, while adding our own little flair here and there.
All right. What, did you have something else you wanted to say there?
Nothing.
All right. So let us move a little bit further on with just your TTRPG stuff then. Perhaps we could start off with, say, what was your biggest pet peeve while playing in tabletop games, both of you?
We're playing what?
Any system, just a biggest pet peeve you've generally experienced.
Metagaming. that's more of a thing for me as a GM, but
that is a pet peeve. Like it's even more worse when like if you get out a piece of information, the person's gonna metagame.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but
not gonna lie. Sorry, you carry on, guys.
Sorry. And it's one thing if like a character has like some out of character knowledge that they're pretty sure is relevant, and they're not certain that their character would know. So like, to give and then asks and goes, "Would my character know this?" or "Can I say this?" That's fine. Because yeah, okay, it's technically metagaming, but you're at the very least like trying to not metagame and go, I actually know the answer to this riddle IRL. Can I just fucking say it, or do I need to roll something for my character so it's not metagaming? Like that shit's fine, totally fine. But like just blatantly metagaming is no bueno.
Yeah, I know that feeling. I have GM'd a lot of games. There's one going on right now who's a person involved in that, whose name shall not be named, to protect the guilty. They have a habit of metagaming on an unreasonable amount. They seem to have it in their head. Or rather, they don't know when to stop being meta and when they're actually talking in their in character.
Yeah, but we can do what we gotta do.
Yeah. Other than that, there's not really a whole lot that kind of ticks that I consider a pet peeve while playing. I mean, like, everyone's got their kind of general usual, like, no one likes that guy.
Yeah, Nexus in the chat
But
has pointed it out precisely.
actually, I should probably go look at the chat, so I can laugh at them. But yeah, like, it's
But yeah, that's about it.
like, as long as everyone's having fun, like, I don't usually care what's happening, and I mean, I understand, like, there are definitely some characters that can be, like, really, really annoying, and that's like just how the character is, and you're not even being like, I have a little bit of a habit to sometimes play characters like that.
I mean, to be fair, KCAT and all of its derivatives have a mechanic for people who can, be meta as a part of the game.
Yes, called random.
So there are ways you can incorporate people who are just really bad at separating that information out and just have characters that can break the fourth wall by design.
Yeah, but that's how you get IRL gods. Like Biscuit.
Okay, you've now dropped a reference. You now got to explain it.
Yeah, that is perfectly okay. So back when we were doing what we were calling the masterless system, which is the basis for the Fallout Equestria system. So essentially when we were playtesting this game, Biscayne, who's our editor-in-chief, had a character named Biscuit that and was a random build, and a really powerful random build. It's because of him we ended up nerfing random quite significantly because of some of the stuff he did, and like Biscuit was just really good. Biscayne, we tend to call Biscayne Biscuit, but Biscayne was really good at playing Biscuit and really good at using random in like some absolutely fantastic ways. Like, he was there yesterday, in a really hilarious twist of fates where we were moving from one place to another place, and his character randomly pops out despite being on like the other side of the continent from under a rock and goes, says something insulting to us, and then disappears because random. And then we kind of get through do some things, and we get into a bit of trouble, and we end up calling his character, Biscuit, and saying, hey, like, we need some help. Could you come over here and do your thing? Because he was good with like explosives and repair and whatever. And he goes, yeah, I'll be there yesterday. And then hangs up the phone, and all of a sudden, oops, pardon me, there's a knock on our on the door of the room we're in. And he goes, what the hell? I told you guys I was here yesterday. But the thing is where he was in the when he popped up under the rock and insulted us, in game, that was a day ago. So he was there yesterday. And shit like that just made it really fun to play with. And then eventually that character became self-aware, gained the ability to read character sheets, was aware that he was just a character on a character sheet and just a random grouping of numbers, and eventually acquired godhood in this game.
Motherfucker escaped the Matrix.
Escaped the Matrix. He went into a couple different systems, like Ponytails, Fully Aware, and a whole bunch of other shit. And like, there was one game I was running around time travel and mega spells, and we ended up destroying the fabric of reality. And so he ended up like just TPKing everyone and then resetting everything, and fixing the timeline continuum or whatever.
I'm gonna say something here. The GM in me is screaming right now.
Yeah. And so you can see why we nerfed random, because like stuff like that happened, and that is why you don't just give characters the random trait all willy-nilly.
No. You make sure that person knows what they're doing, and you're entirely okay with the nonsense they're going to pull.
Absolutely. Yeah. No.
It it's
Um.
it's almost like having like we expect nonsense of certain kinds of characters when playing pen and paper games. Like for example, the bard being extra horny.
Mhm.
But this is a whole new level.
Yeah. So it's important to know your players and to kind of miter expectations, and like I said, you can't just like hand out this trait all willy-nilly. You got to know, you got to be careful at who's allowed to be random, because it is like what everyone thinks chaotic neutral is, but as a superpower. It is chaotic neutral, the superpower.
At least it's not chaotic evil, the superpower. All the
I
orphans
mean,
will be running scared.
uh, uh, I mean, that's just like it. You're right, because instead of us being afraid of the Philly Scouts, the Philly Scouts would be afraid, and that's not something that's allowed in this system.
Hold on, people. Sorry. Sorry about that, people. Just had to be called away for just a brief moment. I would probably
Understand.
chopping that out in the video. All right. Where were we before things?
What was that? Pet peeves.
Oh, actually, I remember a
Yes.
really fun random character in one of my games.
Do tell.
So, bit of a diatribe, and I think we got plenty of time for this. So, in one of the first games I ever GM'd, which was called Once Upon a Time in Germany, and it was using, I think it was using at the time Mad Mod. So, this was a long time ago. It would have been what? I would have been like 17 at the time. So, about 8 years ago. We got a character who was random in the party. But not just random and a split personality. One of the personalities was random, the other one wasn't. So that's already some interesting stuff going on there. What was her name? Her name escapes me, but I remember the character so vividly.
Double trouble.
No, it wasn't that.
Well, I tried.
Actually, I can go look this up, but point being, the character, like I said, had a split personality, and one was random, one wasn't. They still worked with the same character sheet, but the personalities, while we're aware of each other, kind of bled into each other to an uncomfortable degree. So what would happen is that, how can I describe this? Whenever the character would get into trouble, the what's it called? The random personality would step in. There we go. Found the campaign. Let's go have a little look, see at the character's name so I can bring it up.
So you like the random Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde?
Kinda, yeah. Like that. It was it had that kind of duality of character. That's not it. Silver Strings, that's what it. Silver String.
Why does that sound familiar?
Mostly because I imagine probably Michael or Vadram told you a lot about her. But yeah, so Silver Strings was the random personality, and she would do the pretty stereotypical random stuff, like she produced balloons from unknown places. She was like she would have like conversations with inanimate objects and just generally be a random character.
I will say this: a proper use of in-blank emergencies is absolutely amazing. It is a really great perk.
We don't have that perk, or at least that perk wasn't available at the time.
Probably not.
But
was
actually, at the time, there were no random perks at all.
Yeah.
Like it was just you had the trait, and that was that.
Yeah, that was one of the things we made for our system in our game was the specific random perk tree. Yeah. A lot of good perks in there.
But yeah, the other personality actually didn't have a name until the personality defined it for themselves in a conversation with many of the other party members. She named herself Hearthsong, I believe it was.
Silver Strings, Hearthsong. Yeah, okay.
And the most memorable event I remember her doing was it was amazing because of a combination of abilities. She could fire a bazooka and have it be silent. And the way it worked is that she'd fire a rocket with a parachute attached to it, which would catch all the smoke as it flew towards the target.
That's ridiculous. I like it.
But it was amazing. That is definitely a thing I would allow in one of my games.
It's such a delightfully random thing. But anywho, let's move on before we start breaking our brains on how this works.
Right, I only have an hour.
Right. So I'll leave this as an open question if you want to maybe do it later, but do you have any like humorous stories you want to share with the chat from a game in Dead Tree or any other system you want to throw at us?
I'll make this one quick. So there's this one, the first campaign I ran and the longest. So my players are like level 23, right? And when my players made a new character, she's supposed to be the character of two previous characters in the party and came from the future. Mind you, this campaign, went on for like a couple years. In game was only like one. But anyway, because she's just now conceived, but she came back about 20 years from the future. And they asked me, hey, do you want to win? Do we win? Like, do we win like the final battle and stuff? And I say, yes, you do. So I plan this like grand like final battle. I get my friends to make some spirits. It's going to be like dealing with Pinkamena. She's possessing this other person trying to get revived because she's like straight evil, not actually Pinky, but like Pinkamena. She's chaotic evil. And he's like, okay, so all they need to do is break through the spirits, kill this girl, and then the world is saved, right? So she comes in and says, hey, I'm from the future. Whatever you do, do not shoot this pony. The one that was possessed is going to be like the coming of the second Antichrist or whatever, right? And everyone stops, right? The whole party stops. They listen to the person that just came in. Now, metagaming, I would have allowed here because I believe the only reason they didn't like ignore her, orders, this random mare with too many guns. Oh yeah, she had too many guns, by the way. It's because they knew it was a player character, so they only had time limit of like 10 turns. And because I know how like powerful people can get, like level 20, I didn't think that was gonna be a problem. Told them that they would just take out the girl, because especially considering all the other shit we went through. But they listened to her and they just let it count down. So each turn, I'm like, okay, you sure you don't want to do anything? You sure you don't want to do anything? It's getting kind of like they're not attacking, but you sure you don't want anything to be done right here? And it's like, no, like just let them count down. So they count down, and she fully immersed herself into this like person she just possessed, and says, "Congratulations, PnP has now been revived inside this girl's body," and she immediately teleports away, and she went to the mirror pool and cloned herself. And so the world ended again under a pink apocalypse.
What?
Yep.
That was a roller coaster.
Oh, what the fuck happened? Like, how do they not think to do something?
Because they're players. You said you GM'd. You know what's like having a little grade 1 book of puzzles that you have to keep in your desk as part of your GMing guide?
To be fair,
And the player did sabotage the. Oh, sorry. Continue.
No, you carry on. You say your thing.
I was like answering Nexus this question. It's like the player sabotaged the ending of the campaign. Technically, yes and no. Like they didn't expect to lose. That's also a metagaming thing, I guess. But whatever. They didn't expect to lose, but neither did I. I expected them to do as they did in every other campaign and boss encounter I ran in the past like 3 years or whatever, how long I ran that game. I didn't expect at the end where murder hobering was mandatory, they would reserve themselves because of her misinterpreting. I said they will win at the end. As
They
will
still
win
gotta
no
go
matter-
do it, though!
Yeah.
Sweet fuck up these. Ah! I wish for death. I wish for death in Minecraft.
Okay, Steve. I don't think I have a story that kind of like tops that. I've got a couple humorous ones. I don't know. Should I talk about Junk Mermaid Shanzan, or should I I guess I got save that for later. All right. In that case, I guess I'll talk about the time that I had a random character, because we're gonna go on this random train apparently. So a friend of mine played a character, and I let him do random because he can occasionally be kind of interesting. And I knew that like if he wasn't going to do anything like super interesting with it, like it was just going to be mostly things like, can I draw a wall on a door? Things that like I could really easily handle. And so we're playing through, and we're essentially doing the like Dead Money DLC in from Fallout New Vegas because I'm boring. And they're in the middle of like the Sierra Madre, and they're trying to print out a map of this casino so that they can like do whatever it is they were sent in to do. I totally forget what it was. And get out with relatively ease. Okay, great. Roll. How many sheets of paper are you trying to roll? And he's like, oh, I'll roll 4. Or he wanted to print off 4, and so I tell him to roll me 4 luck checks. He passes 1, fails a couple others, or fails another, and then crit fails the 3rd. So I decide that this printer is going to come to life, and it screams that it wants to be fed children and starts throwing paper shurikens at everyone. They eventually defeat it and get out, and they find that the printer apocalypse has started, and that this specific brand of printers, which were named the Dread Printers, it was the Dread Printer Company, had come to life and started killing people and demanding to be fed children. The main one that they mostly fought was a printer model called Roberts. It was the Dread Printer Roberts.
Oh!
Uh-huh.
Oh, the
they were
pun,
all
it hurts!
they were all named after Princess Bride characters. Like there's the Dread Printer Tiny, the Dread Printer Inigo Montoya, a lot of them. And eventually they end up having one of the characters ends up like failing a charisma roll against these and starts thinking they're a god and trying to feed the little filly in the party to the fucking printers. So every time they end up fighting them, this big ass diamond dog keeps picking up this little foal and trying to give her as an offering to these printers because they demand to be fed children. They then end up having to go to the Dread Printer Company main office, and essentially it just ends up doing like a whole Rainbow Factory thing, because again, I'm not very creative. And I don't know, just all in all, it was a really funny instance where like just someone's random bullshittery just became an entire campaign arc of fighting the Dread Printer Company. Because obviously no one would be scared of a Dread Printer Wesley.
Oh. Oh, you're causing me physical pain here. Oh. All right. I brought this on myself. Let's move on to the obligatory questions to end my suffering. Okay, so how did you both get into MLP and probably then by extension FOE?
I got into it around season 2. I just started watching a random episode, and I was like, okay, this is a good show, and I watched another one. And I got to a point where there was some continuity. And if you don't know me, I like continuity, but I hate spoilers. So I immediately stopped watching the episode and went back to the first episode, like season 1, and we watched the whole thing so I can see what I can catch up on what was going on. And that's how I got into MLP, because then I was forced myself to watch the rest of the show, and I was like, oh, I like this.
For me, it was season 1, episode 6 on 4chan. Yeah, I'm like kind of an older, more OG brony in that sense, and yeah, just people were shit posting about it on 4chan, and I'm like, screw it, I'll take a look at it, and I watched it, and it was pretty good. For Fallout Equestria, I just ended up finding the fic on like EQD. Nothing exciting there. And then meeting him and getting into the tabletop game, I actually met Zen and the rest of Dead Tree through Biscayne, because we were friends and we were drunk at a party at BronyCon in 2013, hanging out because he was performing. And yeah, I was doing a Fallout Equestria comic at the time, which was relatively popular in the fandom back. Like, I mean, it was popular then. If you look at all the like numbers and metrics, it's not popular by like today's standards, but it was relatively popular. And he was like, "Oh yeah, you know, blah blah blah. Since you like Fallout Equestria, you should like come join me and my friends as we play Fallout Equestria." And then I got thrown into the game Diamonds that was being GM'd by Versal, and it was a lot of fun.
So it was.
And I met Zen.
So it was all about your. It was all about the pen and paper game that actually brought you into the idea wholeheartedly. Then.
Yeah. I mean, like I was really big and interested into the Fallout Equestria, the story, and like the fandom itself already, but I didn't really like do Fallout Equestria pen and paper until Biscuit and them were like, "Hey, there's a PnP and it's fun."
And now look where he's at.
I know. Sitting here making post-apocalyptic magical role-playing games and exciting Monster Girl PnPs that are currently funding on Indiegogo.
Check it out now.
Yes. I'm surprised you waited this long to start shilling.
I mean, look, I'm gonna shill, but I'm not gonna like be a douche and completely derail your entire interview. That's kind of rude.
I mean, sure. But anyway, moving on. Another obligatory question. Your views on the Big Five, you two.
The big 5 stories. I'll go first on this one, and it's the big 4 because Project Horizons is not worth mentioning.
I mean, it's an important work. I'm going to say this, and now,
If you like Project Horizons, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I just personally don't like the story.
so I'm going to say this, that PH is a magnum opus for the FOE community. That doesn't mean that it's good. I'm saying it's incredibly significant.
Yeah.
My views on that is that I enjoyed it till chapter 30. Chapter 30 till 69, because that's why I stopped reading. I was interested, and then I got spoiled on how it ends, and then I lost all interest.
We got a fella in the chat though who wants to know what the big 4/5 are. So the big 5 are Forward Equestria, Project Horizons, Pink Eyes, Murky Number 7, and Heroes. These are the big 5 fics within the fandom.
Now, not Murky. I haven't seen or read Murky, but I did read Heroes and Pink Eyes.
Yeah.
I actually really like Pink Eyes. I did find that it got
The ending dragged out too much.
and it was kind of weird. The ending was weird, but in between that and the ending, I found her innocent propped up a bit too much. At least how it affected others, not how much it was in herself.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed the story. It was good. It was short, and it had its own original area that it kind of like dealt with. For Heroes, I didn't actually read much. I think I got to like chapter 22. I want to say, but I did enjoy that story. For as long as it went. Other people said it kind of was boring, but I found it enjoyable.
Yeah. I'm kind of about the. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm kind of about the same as Zen. I very much like Pink Eyes. I think it's quite, despite it's got a lot of faults. It's certainly not a perfect story. It's if you exclude Project Horizons from the list, you could even argue that it's not. It's probably one of the least well-written ones out. But it was cute. It was heart-wrenching at times. It had a lot of really good moments. The characterization and the character development was pretty good. Its biggest flaw, like Zen said, was that like she tended to be a little bit Mary Sue-ish in the fact that she would like kind of make some hard, gruff characters almost do a 180 into being, really nice and whatever. Which not necessarily bad in itself, but like it happened a lot.
There's one.
And some of them were a little bit too difficult. Like Henrietta was pretty good, in my opinion. The way Henrietta was handled in her character was good. But so there was that, and then the other big one was just, well, the other two big issues was the Lost Herd, because the Lost Herd just kind of came completely out of left field. So that's all the undead foals in the other suits that were undead ghouls, the feral ghoul horde that she meets in like the last 5 chapters whatever left field, and if I was to like edit, like professionally edit the story with the writer, I would make him start like putting in hints and building up to it throughout the entire story.
I mean, to be fair, I only finished. Sorry, you carry on.
Sort of like what Fallout, the original fic, did with Alicorns, because there was that lead up, and it was pretty good. But the ending dragged on. You knew it was coming pretty much the entire story, that she was gonna find her dead mom, but just really kind of dragged it out to really avoid that issue. And that was like probably its biggest flaw, was the fact that it maybe went on for like 3 to 5 chapters where it should have ended 3 to 5 chapters earlier. Heroes was okay-ish, definitely better than Project Horizons. Murky number 7, I freaking adore. It's like, it's entirely character development. The entire story is only about character development. And a lot of people really hate, including myself, Murky. Murky's I detest him, but I like character development, and I like well-written character development. That kind of stuff really keeps me coming back, and it's so well written to
Like,
see
you don't have
his
to like.
struggle.
You don't have to like the character to enjoy the story of the character.
Exactly. And it's just, his struggle is so well written, in my opinion. It is probably my favorite outside of the original story. And for Project Horizons, like I said, I really don't like it. The only thing that would make Project Horizons good or bearable is if Project Horizons ended like, the end written exactly how it is currently, and then after the whole thing on the moon or whatever, and like everyone dies and the story ends, it goes the end, a novella by Little Pip. For those of you who don't know, by novella I mean a short, like 100 to 200 page book. Those are technically called novellas. Not a TV novella. I mean like the book novella. So it makes this whole massive, just insanely long story. A novella by Little Pip. And I'd piss everyone off who likes that story so much, but it would just be so perfect. And I would actually go through and reread that entire story and suffer through it just for that one line.
I mean, I want to go briefly back to Pink Eyes just for a bit about the
Sure.
the ghost herd.
Mhm.
Like, it was what, three suits? That's it.
No, I think it was more than that.
It was
No,
three.
it was like it was a whole
like 20.
school.
Yeah, it was
a whole
like
school of
20.
children that died and became the herd. And at the end, I believe 3 broke off and was in the final battle and got killed.
I mean, I only remember 3 being mentioned because I only remember
those were the
3
ones in the final
signals
battle.
being mentioned in the book. So
they were the ones that got killed. I know there was like 3, but there was like a whole school of fillies that were foals that were basically the same thing as puppy eyes, but they actually were Canterlot ghouls. But yeah, that's what happened.
Yeah, it was a whole school, and the 3 you're thinking of are the 3 that fell in the final battle, because they were the only ones of any significant note. Because the actual full herd it's only a 1-paragraph meeting with this full herd. And that's what I'm saying with like the herd, the lost herd just kind of comes and goes, and it's so sudden and it's so out of left field.
So I was listening to an audiobook of it, and it's not mentioned. Like, the one time it's mentioned is mentioned early in the book by Sandbox. That's it. Then those 3 people turn up, no more.
Like like I said, the whole thing's just so out of left field, and it really had, the way it was written, it could have just been completely removed from the entire story and nothing would have changed. You could replace the 3 that were in that final battle with random towns ponies.
I mean, you couldn't, because just what they do during the final battle, you couldn't replace them that easily.
The herd as a threat is insanely dangerous.
Mhm.
If he brought the whole herd, I think everyone would have died, except for
Oh.
Puppy Eyes, because she was already one of them.
She's already dead.
I mean, clearly at least some of them have their mind still floating about in the lost herd, because if that was the case, if they didn't have at least one mind about them, they would be wandering an awful lot more.
Mm.
Because
Yeah.
it's
no idea
shown.
what it will be, but they do have something that's making them move.
Well,
Yeah,
at least
like
one
I
of them
said,
must have a
there's
mind, because Puppy Smiles picks up one of them and brings them along with her. And
Yeah.
it doesn't attack anybody, and that's it attacks Puppy Smiles. Or at least,
Yeah.
Spoilers for the ending of that fic. Creepy voice takes over.
Oh yeah, we forgot about that one.
Like, so clearly there's at
the
least.
creepy voice was. Sorry, go.
So there must be at least one person with a consciousness leading that group. Otherwise, it would just be marauding around, butchering towns left, right, and center.
Like normal feral herds.
Yes,
Yeah, I agree.
but it's not doing that.
Um,
They're not heard or seen of at all.
hmm And that's what I mean by the fact that they're so left field, and like the whole story would need to be rewritten to have them more prominent and with a better lead up throughout the entire story. I could even I can kind of forgive how the ending drags on.
I mean, there's
But,
also a faction that's mentioned in the story that doesn't get brought up at all.
Oh yeah.
But anywho, I think we should move on while we still have time.
Mhm.
So this will be the last question before we go for a short commercial break. So what do you think of the FOE fandom in general, and how healthy is it right now, and where do you think it's going?
Let Zen go.
All right. So how healthy it is? We have our communities, like you, and we have our Discord. You have your Discords. So we're around, obviously, and obviously we're still active. As evidenced by your talk show right now.
Mm-hmm.
East Coast is wrapping up their foray into their different lore sections and video calls and shit stuff. We still have a couple of expansions on the way, and once cons come back, we'll be able to meet again inside convention centers. As long as people are still producing, we'll still have a fandom. And obviously, there's so many fics, so many fans that I don't think they're gonna disappear overnight. I won't say it's in the best condition, but I don't think we're gonna have any threat of being, destroyed in the next year or two.
To kind of build off of that, in my opinion, I feel like the Fallout Equestria part of the fandom is probably the strongest part of the My Little Pony fandom. But that being said, we also relatively early on kind of threw ourselves into our own little caves and holes, and the Fallout Equestria resource and the IRC chats and all of that, and kind of dug into our own kind of pseudo fandom. Because I mean, especially during the heyday of the My Little Pony fandom, like the Fallout Equestria fandom was essentially its own separate fandom.
I
I mean,
mean,
we get people who aren't even pony fans, but say, "Hey, Fallout Equestria."
to be fair, guys, as a fandom, this is a personal step in here. We're not actually a fandom that needs to cannibalize itself to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
We basically are self-sufficient with our own creative works. We don't actually need something else to be pulled apart to get us to keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we did, technically speaking, since Fallout, the original story was the first 1.5 technically seasons, and we kind of just went from there. We're pretty much okay as long as people are still creating, people are still talking about it.
Yeah. And I mean, if you keep your eyes on the Fallout Equestria resource, new fics are getting posted and updated almost hourly still. Definitely daily. On the slower days, it's still going, and I mean, and it's really hilarious when you get into things how like tight knit sections of this community is. Like most of the major creators all know each other. Most of the major podcasters know each other. Like even some of the smaller people. Like I mean, just I guess for like example, and I mean just because it's such a fun, great community, and there's so much to explore in the actual universe, and it's driven by the fans, you know, because there's like 200 plus years in a massive ass continent of things to explore. And so people, you know, like PABS, the post-apocalyptic broadcasting community, they're not dead. They've almost died. They've been kind of on hiatus. But you know, like their big thing is focusing on stories of things that happened from when the bottoms fell to when Little Pip walked out of the stable.
And Nuclear
And
Horse Productions,
mhm,
like they're coming with new audio logs.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Storyteller series based off the Strikecast one.
oh yeah. I had
And
Comic Sans Pony and I had Forrest McGilvery on the show. They were really good.
So
they're great
essentially,
people.
we are the stables back when before the Fallout started, and then once it ended, since the Fallout, we're still here.
Yeah.
We're currently in the stable right now.
Ready for emergence. Haha,
for
there's some chilling.
Right.
Because that's the name of our adventure module that we're releasing for Pilot Equestria. But yeah, and like I mean, Stable Tech Studios became East Corp, and they're focusing on again like story audio log type stuff. They're still doing stuff. They haven't died. And I mean everyone knows about Overmare Studios, despite the fact that they go dark. And all they do is they just kind of disappear, and then like every 6 years go, hey, here's the thing.
You know
Because
what?
a couple years ago
I'm
they
not
released.
not gonna lie.
Sorry.
When that eventually gets released, I will be putting that content up on the channel. I will be doing a playthrough of that game when it eventually gets
It
released.
looks really great. Just
And
that
yes,
little demo that they put out. And like there are just so many like other little things. Like I mean, I'm not a big part of it, but I mean shit, if you get like Captain, who is one of the
Oh
major
yeah.
mods, like there's an entire community just around the FOE wiki.
Oh yeah. I've already had like Captain Horse on the show. Like me and I are good friends.
Um Every time I think about Captain Horse, I just think about him being Captain of Fleur, and you know the legal lollies on?
No.
yes.
I know you don't. Okay, so at BabsCon, not this year, but because they didn't have a BabsCon, but last year, I was the lead for the tabletop games room. And there was this girl who I'm just going to refer to as the legal lolly. Now I had been awake for 48 hours at this point, doing doing con things, and I mean like con staff things. And I'm in the room, pulling my shift in the room, and this little girl who I thought looked 18 walks in with this guy who I assumed was 16, and it was like, "Hey, can we play?" Um, uh,
I think it was
Cards
Scrabble.
Against Humanity, and I'm like,
Right.
"Yeah, sure."
Hello.
So I'm like, here, yeah, and I grab the box and I bring it over to a table. It's free. I'm like, yeah, here you go. This one doesn't have anyone reserving it yet, so you can use this table. And Biscayne, calls over and goes, Lala, what time is it? And I'm like, 5 to 9. And he goes, Lala, what time is it? And I'm like, 5 to 9. Like, like at 9 p.m. after dark started, and that's when the adult games like Carnegie are allowed to be played. But like, I'm sitting here going, man, it's 5 minutes. Like, no one cares. And there's not really anyone in the room, and there's no kids in the room. And he's like, didn't After Dark start an hour ago? I'm like, no, it starts in 5 minutes. Why? And he looks at me and he goes, Lala, she's 12. I stop and I look at this girl, and she looks 12 now, not the 18 that I thought she was, because she looked like a gymnast. And seriously, she looks like this 12-year-old, and she's like, I have ID, and it turns out she's 21. And then later in the night, her playing, one of the Fleur members who were off duty called Fleur to report that there was a minor playing Cards Against Humanity at like 11 p.m. And so Captain himself came by because him and I had know each other, and so he decided to go check it out himself. And he's like, hey, I heard there was a minor here. And I'm like, what are you talking about? We've been checking ID. Like, no one here is under 18. And he's like, one of my guys was sitting here saying that there's this little girl playing Cards Against Humanity. And I stop and I go, oh, you mean the legal lolly? And I point to her. And he sees this little 12-year-old girl sitting at this table playing Cards Against Humanity. And I always think about that every time I think about Captain Horse. Or Captain Horse, because Captain Horse is someone different. And good times.
Good times.
It turns out she works at a maid cafe,
Oh,
like a 21 plus maid cafe
oh,
in Vegas.
this has gone very adult all of a sudden.
It is a maid cafe.
It's just a maid cafe, but it's absolutely hilarious. What do you think about the fact that she looks 12? And she like legit looks 12.
Oh, she gets bank. But anyway, let's not talk about that. This
Yeah,
isn't about her.
that makes me sad.
With that note, we're going to go for a short commercial break, and we'll be back with Lauren discussion.
There's a reason Sparkle Cola has remained Equestria's most popular beverage since it was first introduced to the public. Not just its refreshing taste, but also because Sparkle Cola uses only the finest equestrian ingredients. And we add just the faintest hint of magic for that refined flavor you can only get from an ice-cold Sparkle Cola. Because we're a company you can trust, ran by real equestrians, you can be sure that Sparkle Cola's spectacular taste just can't be beat. And for every Sparkle Cola you buy, 1 bit goes to supporting our mares and stallions in uniform. So sit back and enjoy the great equestrian taste of Sparkle Cola. Sparkle Cola. What you want is a spark.
Welcome back. So in this next part, we're trying something a little bit different with our normal thing. Previously, the topics would be randomly determined for the lore and discussion section. From now on, depending on how well this goes, the guests will be picking the topics. They've already pre-picked, and let us begin with... this is what Zen wanted. Kieran's an FOE. So you wanted to pick this topic. I believe you had something you wanted to say about it.
Alright, I'm gonna crack my knuckles real quick. So, originally we had a poll of just like dealing on our Discord. What race you would like to see Dead Tree Studios release? You know, first it was Changelings, then it was Bat Ponies, and then I did it a third time. It's like, okay, and I added like Kieran's to the list. Because I thought, you know, obviously they would want one of the races that have already been seen in Equestria, but I would assumed that the populace at large would choose a race that wasn't as new. I was wrong. After Changeling and Bat Ponies were taken, Kieran's were next up, and I was just like face palming because I realized we had nothing for him, and they didn't have no like really lore behind them besides that one episode. So I had to scratch my head to get what lore would the Kieran's that was presented in the show, not the half dragon, half pony like hybrids, like offspring hybrids that on the original species would be. And unfortunately, the show went in a way that they didn't even take from the stereotypes of like Asian mythology. So I can't even like base anything off of that without adding technically fan and ideas to it. So I was like, okay, so what I'm going to do? What do I have? Okay, they have the Lyric form. Got it. They have a mirror pool. Not really about that race, but something they have. Okay, I got something from that. And they can't talk. Well, okay. So if they can't talk, why wouldn't they talk? In the Fallout Equestria timeline. And that's because, Applejack and Fluttershy obviously never went there. So I had to figure out how to integrate them into equestrian society. And through the way I did it in our little document we have, is that they got found out by exploration parties, because obviously after the war they needed to expand and see what they can gather for resources for the war, and they found the Karens. But they being so far out, I decided to turn their mountain home into a spa resort for the rich, because it's very beautiful, and everyone's enjoying it, so that section of corruption is there. Anyway, but other than that, I didn't really have much else, so I had to take what I could, and the only thing that really gave me an insight on how a Karen might be beyond the completely silent one was Autumn Blaze's song. Her song is, I want to say 3 minutes long, or something like that, 2 minutes. And I had to look through each verse, check the video back and forth a couple of times to get an inspiration on what to make for the Karen's position and how they view things. And this might be even completely wrong because it's only from one Karen, obviously. But I took everything from that one song and chopped it up and sprinkled it about into the lore we thought about. And I realized, holy crap, this is not going to please anybody. But they pretty much enjoyed it, more or less. But it was just so annoying. And this is a problem that they have for many of their races and My Little Pony in general, because they will introduce a race and probably never meet them again. With the exception being the Griffins, who had several episodes dedicated to them, thankfully. But how do I feel about them in Fallout proper? If I didn't personally integrate them into the society, I honestly would only see them as being second class citizens, because they're quote unquote tribal. And if they're still under the curse by this time when they do meet, they definitely wouldn't feel a need to even attempt to fight this obvious superpower, who by the time they would probably been found in the story, the ministries would have been formed. So they definitely would have got I can't even say annexed, because they wasn't really a nation. They're just a single tribe.
I imagine it'd be something very akin to how the British Empire did things. They turn up to a place, they find the locals, plonk down a flag, and say, "You now work for us." Now, no flag, no country.
Yeah, that's kind of how I did it in the document I have. But other than that, they should just be gone, extinct. There really should be no Karens in Fallout Equestria, unless it's strictly they was preserved by the Equestrian government. There's another case. If they was never found at all, that's also a possibility. If it was never found at all, once the bombs went off, they would be perfectly fine to do whatever they wish, because they're just another tribe.
I personally just imagined it that they are very insular as a species. They live in this one place where pretty much all of them are, or rather very much very thinly spread out compared to that, or rather, they're very sparsely populated elsewhere. I imagine that this one community, since it doesn't seem to have very much strategic value, would have been pretty much ignored by everyone. So I imagine it wouldn't have been bombed, so it would be a relative paradise on Earth. But what comes to my mind is, pony refugees going there, and the Kirins see the value in having a labor pool to do what they want to do in exchange for a very thin slice of their paradise.
Funny you say that. because that's kind of what I said in the doc.
I mean, I didn't really read much of the lore in your document, to be honest.
See,
I'm offended.
Hey, you took my money already. It doesn't matter what I do with it at that point.
this is true. However, we got sort of the same idea from you not reading the lore. Is I think pretty cool.
But also, what Nexus brings up is that we also had another idea, at least in our in Shotgun Diplomacy, the other project I'm working on, is that they do have enclaves in other places, like in the Everfree or Whitetail Wood. There's very few of them there, but they live there.
Yeah, I can see it. I've no, like I said, it's in the position where they're just not found at all. If they wasn't killed by, they definitely wasn't killed by the dropping on the bombs, so they can be there by that. But if they was found, they would have to be really careful not to go extinct.
Seeing as you've only got like 4 minutes before you have to go, a person in the chat asked a question. Let's have you answer it. It was in regards to what you're doing at Gen Con.
Mm-hmm.
Was that the module which was demoed at Gen Con?
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
So, Brenny, in answer to the question, yes. Sorry for a bit of a delay on answering it for you. 1 second, guys.
Yeah. Engineering diversity would be a big issue.
Shoot.
All right, we're back.
Yeah, and like I said, I can ask the second question too.
All right, go ahead.
I forget the second question.
Was there a second question? I don't think there was.
The ones we picked pre.
Oh, those topics. Okay, we can. Yep. We got like not very much time, but some time.
Yeah, don't trust me. I'll be fine.
Okay, so energy weapons, dusting, and gooing. How does it work?
Did I choose that one? All right, so.
I mean, that was no. Actually, was it yours? Your one? Actually, 1 second. I'll check what I've got.
I think it was mine.
Sorry, my bad. This actually is the other question. We'll look at that one in a moment. Yep. Necromancy and the Wasteland. How does it work? Who can do it?
I think that was also mine.
Okay, I've got one more. Unusual magic and FOE. At what point does unusual become Mary Sueish?
Okay, gotcha. All right, for this one, this is a very interesting one because for magic and FOE, when I read the original fic, magic wasn't really on the forefront. At least not what one would think, like unicorn casting magic. There's obviously magic everywhere. And when I first started running games, I built my enemy unicorns not magic heavy to more keep in line with the story. Because obviously, if there's a magical apocalypse, how many people would actually know how to properly cast the fireball spell? Probably a clan and whoever he taught it to. But obviously, it's not everyone. And same with any other spell. But I started breaking that down after my players started, choosing, the magical schools and start going through their own sort of things and start asking me, hey, can I learn this spell here? And I kept saying no because I was still under depression, they're not leading the story, but I broke out of that line of thought. Anyway, so when unusual magic types come into play, that's beyond like the standard shields, the energy blasts, the cloning techniques, I guess, because our season 8, they could be really interesting. Because we have a set number of spells, or not really a set, because we have a listed number of spells, doesn't mean those are all the spells in the universe. Now, some of them can be less broad or more specific, but doesn't mean that's the end all be all. So let's say, Applejacks, Blackjacks, telekinesis bullet, which is supposed to be a usage of telekinesis just to hone it into a point and firing it, even though it's like the most powerful thing in the universe. But it's not really, it's unique, but it's not really new, or depending on who you ask Mary Sewish, it's just a different application. And as people would obviously learn new magics depending on where they are, let's say a energy strike ice spell, freezing something in a swamp, will probably lead to just straight up shooting water instead of actually freezing it, or something along those lines. When it will really get Mary Sewish, I feel, is if it is, for some odd reason, in their bloodline, like quite literally no one else can learn it. That's the first step. And second is if this spell is exceedingly more powerful than any other spell on the market. And third, in combination with those previous two, if the spell who is more powerful and only because they can, have a bloodline or some special quality, they suffer a drawback that's not an equivalent exchange. If you guys know anime, Naruto, I'll use that one for any Narutos out there. The Sharingan, obviously a point of contention, unique bloodline, but it had a drawback before they introduced "you must steal your brother's eyes" to circumvent the going blind part. It was extremely powerful, but you'll eventually go blind. Fine enough. But if that person somehow gets, the cure, like say Sasuke, and becomes super powerful because of it, because there's no drawback, it's obviously Mary Sewish. And to bring it back to Fallout Equestria, again, I don't have any particular idea for a magic spell that I've read in any story that been through this, because usually the drawback at most has been burnout, which is when a unicorn uses more or less more magic than they can muster, and they get like lethargic, tired, and obviously can't cast anything.
When they have magic hangover.
So I haven't seen it in a story, but I have seen people try to play with current available magics in game in a Mary Sewish way. If that answers your question.
Okay, that was an interesting way of talking about it.
Yeah,
Not really
it's
sure
also
what
an
to
interesting
say.
way. Yeah, it's also an interesting way to sort of, step away from the stereotype of unicorns basically only knowing light, levitation, and using guns. The end.
Yeah. Because like I said, when I originally started reading, that's basically what was in the book. Besides Velvet Remedy and her teacher, I don't remember anyone actually casting magic, or at least magic that was useful in any way. But obviously, having that in the tabletop system, if you're a whole party of unicorns, each one can possibly choose a different school of magic and can obviously teach each other. So I quickly had to change my way of thinking. So I don't initially believe that magic is Mary Sewish. However, it all depends on the rules.
I mean, sure, I'll give you that. But, yeah, that was interesting. So, I don't believe we can keep you for much longer now.
Yep, I'll be getting my panic time. So I'm going to leave for now, and L9 is going to be here for however long he can stay. But thank you for having
Another
me.
15-20 minutes.
Yeah, we'll just do your topics, and we'll probably call an end to the show there.
Sounds good.
Alrighty, thanks for having me.
All right, then. Well, we know what your topics you wanted to do. Which one do you want to do first? Necromancy or energy weapons?
I guess energy weapons, because like I like getting into all that nitty gritty. Well, I mean, even necromancy is super nitty gritty. That's why I chose them. I like the nitty gritty topics. So energy weapons. How do they chain you into lasers and goo?
Well,
That was
yeah,
the question, right?
that was the basic idea. Like, why do they do this? Like, we know how it's supposed
Magic.
to work. Well, magic,
Case
obviously.
closed.
That was the no. Stop there. Stop right there with your basic bitch scumness there.
A wizard did it. I freaking hate the idea of it's magic. Like I get the well, why does this happen? It's magic. Keep in mind, like that's why it creates bread without matter. You know, like obviously it's magic, but like I like
But how
hard
does the magic work?
written. So, looking at magical energy weapons, I guess we'll mostly focus on the mu laser weapons instead of the plasma weapons. So when you look at it, I mean, how energy weapons work, at least in our game, from a mechanics point of view, not necessarily like mechanics behind the scenes, but just like when you look into the lore and how we get into other things, and just lore wise, energy weapons essentially use a basic energy strike matrix. So it's got a spell matrix in it, and it uses the power source, and then it has a whole bunch of like foci, and diddly dudes, that essentially beef up and increase the range and turn it into like a las bolt, essentially. Allowing you to take a rather efficient, not very costly spell like energy strike basic, and have it be a frontline infantry weapon almost, and ammo not costing out the wazoo. And I mean, it's essentially just a strike of pure magical energy. How it would end up, turning someone into ash is, from my point of view, just a chain reaction, like kind of similar as to how they explain it in Fallout Equestria. The plasma one works pretty much just exactly the same, but it's got a more well-defined cause and effect because it's plasma energy, and then that just kind of like superheats your body, and the chemical reaction just kind of turns your entire body into goo, from the critical plasma strike. Where with standard MEWs, turning them into ash, it's kind of a similar effect, except because it's just raw energy, like raw sunlight, instead of gooifying you through a slightly different chemical reaction. It's burning you into ash. And
I mean,
I mean, if you want to kind of get into more of the like, and I mean, this is all just kind of like in my head fan theory type bullshit. None of it's been really written down.
I mean, that is a question.
Magic science instead of the, well, yeah, it causes a chemical reaction in your body. The world is a magical world, and magic is treated like a science in Fallout Equestria, which is one of the things I really adored about the story and the universe. Is magic is literally a science. So it would stand to effect that there is some form of magic organ, or there is at least permeant magic in everyone, because even like earth ponies and pegasi and all the other creatures, they have magic. A lot of them have innate magic, I mean, even and it's explained in Fallout Equestria, so it's not just like random lore that Dead Tree decided to come up with, or that I decided to come up with.
Yeah.
But like, look at Red Eye had that speech about like, look at all these pristine, perfect cups, and they were all made mainly by like one Earth Pony. All the he was referencing that they were made by these Earth Pony artisans, and that's Earth Pony magic. I mean, look at Pinkie Pie's flying machine and da 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 da. Every creature in Equestria, because it is a magical society and it's a magical world and magic permeates everything. Everyone has some form of magic. Usually it is innate magic, in which it's the non-outward, it is an internal expression of magic. So, ponies building things that last longer, Pegasi being able to fly despite the fact that the physics wouldn't allow them to fly. So,
Yeah.
a good,
So I just wanted to step in a bit here, and I actually gave this some thought in my head on which races were more magically infused than others, because you're right, all the races have magic to one degree or another, but some races are more magical than others, or make their expressions of magic more overt than others. Like obviously, races that have a spire of some description are very overt in their magic. Like they can literally summon something out of thin air with magic.
You kind of cut out there.
Oh, sorry. What was the last thing you heard me say?
Like more magical than others, and then I started saying more obvious expression of magic, and then you kind of cut out there.
Okay, so what I was trying to say there was that some races have a more overt expression as well than others. Like for example, if you have a spire, then the magic expression is incredibly overt because you literally can summon something magical out of nothing.
Yeah. So horned arcane races definitely have the most overt, the most visual expression of magic, because you can literally see them casting magic. Things are there. Few magic is as obvious or as in your face as a fireball getting lanced towards you. Few things are as obvious, but I would say that all the races have pretty much the same potential and the same infusion of magic. It's just subtler. It is just more subtle. So if you exclude all the arcane races, all the races that are capable of casting spells, you're kind of looking at like, again, less overt, less obvious expressions of magic, but it's all there, whether it's in flight through the manipulation of one's own mass, and even like Pegasi have outwards magical expression through flight tricks, and the ability to manipulate the weather.
I mean, I wanted to step in and say that, like I said, there are some races that have much less, like even subtle ways of manipulating magic. Like, for example, I think the least magically infused race, in my opinion, would be zebras and buffalo. Like, their magic is... I'm not saying that they aren't magical. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that their magic seems to be the most subdued and the most subtle. Like,
so
for the most
going
part,
through like Fallout Equestria, mostly in the game, because now we're looking at like game mechanics. The zebras end up, and buffaloes have spirit magic. So if you and spirit magic itself is not actually competent, or is not actually compatible with arcane magic, at least in our system. And so I mean, if you want to kind of do, if you're kind of talking about like arcane magic in that same sense, then yeah, you'd be looking at those who are more attuned to spiritual magic, which is summoning spirits and binding them to do their thing for you. But it still takes that innate magic to be able to summon or communicate with them.
I mean, yeah, sure, I'm granting that, but I felt that the magic involved in spirits wasn't from the person communing with the spirits. Like, I always interpret
Oh yeah, the magical ability from like me enchanting this shotgun to shoot fire comes from the spirit. But the zebra or the buffalo does have to use their innate magic to either to commune and summon the spirit.
I mean,
And
at least where we maybe differ in that spirits aren't something you summon; they're things that you find. They're entities that exist within the universe that you have to find in the appropriate place that you'd expect them to be.
that works too. But I mean, you because I know you're working on shotgun diplomacy, which has a different approach. But I mean, even if you end up like, even if we go through this, spirits, you have to find them. And I mean, even in our system, you can find spirits, but you can also summon them from the spiritual plane or banish them or whatever. You still have the ability to actually like talk to them and to see them, and to strike deals with them. A lot of that would still be part of that innate that innate magic, because ponies don't have that ability, to see them or convince them or bind them or do any of that stuff. So I would still say that they do have relatively, and I mean, considering that no other race can see them or interact with them on the same level, I would still argue that zebras and buffaloes tend to have the some of the most or do tend to have a relatively potent magical expression. Now, that being said, though, is probably the best way to kind of solve this would be to look at like cybernetics, because cybernetics tend to be one of those things that you know I know Project Horizon's kind of screwed with that a lot, but in our system, cybernetics is one of those things where like not everyone's really able to use cybernetics, at least not to the point of becoming cybercorns. Full on Deus Ex type, and that's usually limited to like earth ponies, zebras, and like diamond dogs and that, because technically, while they do have magic, their expression is the least. It is internal, and cybernetics end up like messing around with their abilities to do things. So like the earth pony specific martial art Iron Hoof, which is about taking that internal magic used for crafting, and that's that gives earth ponies their guff, and their insane ability to build things that last. That ends up being taken and used to reforge their own body, essentially. And earth ponies end up losing the ability to use external expressions of magic, like being better farmers or whatever. So I wouldn't necessarily argue that, and like zebras are kind of in that same realm where they can go up to tier 4 without any major hassles, if I remember correctly. So zebras, like if you really kind of want to argue it, but I feel like everyone's kind of got the same amount. It's just more how you go about using it, or how each race tends to go about using it. Which, getting back to the initial topic, is if you kind of want to go back, and say, well, it kind of doesn't make sense for these magical energy weapons to go and make physical chemical chain reactions that chain react your entire body, then the other point is that they end up doing that chain reaction to the magic infused in your body, because magic in the world is still an actual tenuable, measurable, observable force. It is an energy like light, heat, electricity, whatever, and thus can be manipulated. And so it would make sense that the ashing and the going would actually be either a chemical reaction with your body or a chemical reaction with the magic in your body. Or I guess a magic reaction?
Yeah. On that topic, though, earlier today on a forum, I saw a post where someone mused about, what if someone took some magic canceling material, like stuff that some
Innovation.
sidekicks have, like that they use as, magic blocking rings on unicorns' horns. If you made a shield out of that, how much of the energy beam would protect you from? Would there still be residual, heat energy that would still hurt you? Stuff like that. And
Funny.
the physical impact of the plasma.
Mhm.
Yeah, go ahead.
Funny thing is, how we kind of go about with the unicorn horns is it's actually like a reverse. It's a grounding loop. So essentially, unicorns channel magic in their horns, and like spells and that, especially matrices, end up working a lot like old school analog programming, at least in our heads, and the way we go about doing like matrix rules and stuff. It's old school analog programming. So like actually moving the wires in specific positions and doing the actual weave. You could actually weave a series of wires and magnets to be code. You could make a series of wires and magnets that runs Doom. That is literally the physical embodiment of the coding for Doom. So it works a lot like that, like old school. Think like the computer that was in the Apollo missions. That's old school analog programming. So it works a lot like that. And instead, what the unicorn's anti-casting horns do, it's grounding horns. So instead of the spell coming out of the horn redirects it back, or the ring redirects it back into the horn, because it's an energy like anything else. And so you essentially end up casting the spell on yourself, and the whole thing essentially your horn short circuits and the spell fizzles. That's the way we kind of think about it. So I'm not really certain how a shield made out of our interpretation of unicorn anti-magic horns would work. But you would either summon Cthulhu or it wouldn't really do anything. Or it would be a really excellent torture device.
I mean, we actually put items like that in Shotgun Diplomacy. Like, we actually included basically like horn suppressors and like horn nullifiers. So there are means that that can basically just stop you from using magic if they're put on you, and they can't be removed without either specialist tools or basically some sort of way to remove the locking mechanism on it.
Yeah. And so like it gets really interesting in that regard. So yeah, like I mean, how does magic? It's magic. It's a science, but it's magic, so it does magic things.
So on that point, let's move on to the next one. So necromancy.
Yes. What was the full question about necromancy?
The full statement was necromancy in the wasteland. How does it work? Who can do it?
So we don't have like full-on necromancy magic. We were working on a necromancy magic expansion, but we haven't released it because it can be really fucky. So the way we looked at it is just about anyone can do necromancy magic. And actually, lore-wise in our game, because it lines up and we flat like it's one of the things that we flat out will always say this is how it is, but KCAT doesn't actually specifically say it. So if KCAT says something else, then it's our fanon, not canon. But magical radiation is actually necromantic magic. That's why ghouls happen. That's why ghouls don't need to eat, don't need to sleep. That's why that's why ghouls ghoul. And there is also, like Pink Cloud, which is also another form of necromancy magic.
I mean, on that, this is something that I did personally with that, is that Pink Cloud is a naturally occurring substance that's infused with necromancy. So there are some places in the world where there are basically this rock which in basically when you find it in its natural habitat is basically, imagine what's going on with puppy smiles, where the inside is like a gas and the outside is hard. You find rocks like this in the wild, and it takes some magical MacGuffinry to turn this already pretty dangerous rock that you can just find into a very, very dangerous weapon.
Yeah, and I mean, Pink Cloud itself is gaseous alicorn slaying poison. That was its whole intent. So I'm not necessarily certain how I feel about it being a rock with liquid in it. But it definitely is something the zebras. It could definitely be something that's kind of concocted or found naturally.
But yeah,
Because
what I came up with
Yeah.
on that regard is this isn't something I haven't put in Shotgun Diplomacy. I haven't suggested it to anyone, but this is something I did in games with it. Like it's very hard to find it. It's a crystal that has a gaseous core inside it. That's what it is. And if you break it, the gas will escape and it can hurt you, but because of the nature of where you find it, basically as the gas escapes, it also leaves residue on the cracks, so it closes itself back up again.
It's interesting. I definitely like to see more. Though to kind of get back into, because I gotta go like soon. To kind of try and finish up my thought was like, I mean, it's honestly, I want to say it's closer to like just residual spirit magic, because that's how the that's how mega spells were made. Is they were essentially zebra spirit magic using Fluttershy's mega spell matrix template. Well, not template, but blueprints. Because she shared her mega spell, Equestria's Love, or whatever the fuck it's called, or Fluttershy's Kindness, I think
It was just a massive resurrection spell. That's all we really need to care about.
Yeah, it was. But the first mega spell, which was a massive healing resurrection spell, she shared that with them so that they would have healing magic, and then they essentially reverse engineered it and used the same technique for creating mega spells, but with zebra shamanism, and put those into dragon eggs and created balefire eggs. And so, since balefire eggs themselves are radioactive, they explode and do radiation. That would kind of bring into that zebra magic is a form, or spirit magic. The magic used to summon spirits is just normal magic, but the actual spirit magic themselves is a form of necromantic magic, or what we would consider necromantic magic. You could also call it spirit magic. And because it's that radiation that does the fucky wucky, ooh made a fucky wucky, does all the fucky, necromancy stuff, that would just kind of bring into that. It is the magic of the dead. It is the magic of spirits, from whether it's a spiritual plane or just them hanging around Equestria, whatever. And if you, as a pony or zebra, is able to channel that magic and essentially perform zebra magic or spirit magic, it ends up corrupting like normal necromancy would, that everyone else would. And because it is not the energy of the world, and it is more true magic in the sense of it's a mysterious force that isn't really observable or measurable, despite the fact that it makes bombs that blow things up.
I mean, that's
It's
interacting with
less
other magical stuff as well.
Yes, it becomes more supernatural than regular arcane magic, which is a science in this world. So I guess, yeah, in a really roundabout way, necromancy is spirit magic, and spirit magic is just necromantic in nature, or what we would consider necromantic in nature, because it is more supernatural than magic in the world. If that makes
I mean,
any form of
it's
sense.
something. That's a something there.
And yeah, and that's just really, I guess, the conclusion I've come to from what's observable in the game, in our game, and the mechanics we use, as well as KCAT Core's mechanics, and KCAT's story. Um, So yeah. But it's definitely super interesting and it's a lot of fun to kind of play with. But
I mean,
radiation
I
is
will.
definitely part. Radiation is definitely like magic radiation as the mechanic in the game. I know I gotta go. Is definitely necromancy.
Well, with that, then, seeing as you're being called away as we speak, let us close up the show. So, this has been Post Apoc Horse Talk with your hosts, Gantages, and my co-host, BG. And our guests tonight have been L9 and Zen. So until next time, keep your eyes trained and your gun in its holster, because you never know what the wasteland brings. And have a good night.